you're with Peter Carr and Scott Stewart, and welcome to LTV's The Research Channel. So this episode, no vendors, no products. We're really talking a little bit about strategy and trends and some very interesting things we think are starting to enter the market in 2012 and beyond. Done a lot of travel over the last few months. One of those was, Scott, you were at the Cloud Expo in Santa Clara. Was it Santa Clara? Yeah, it was Santa Clara. Yeah. And one of the things that you not stumbled upon, but one of the organisations you met was a company called
SOA Software.
SOA Software, right. And so there was some very interesting things that they were involved in. And since you've come back, you've done a bit more digging. We've done some further research into this, and potentially a very large trend about to enter a certain part of the market. So what is this we should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. So SOA Software, and as the name alludes, they definitely have done a lot of work in service-oriented architecture and APIs. So what they've done is that they've released an API management portal, and I kind of was going, API management portal, I wanted to find out a little bit more about it, and I've done a lot of deep diving, and I've actually sort of spoken to them again since, and it's been quite interesting. So it's actually indicative of a potential trend, and it's actually hard to sort of try and describe it. So the best way to talk about it is, I'll give you an example of, there's a university in Salt Lake City called Brigham Young. So they needed to look at replacing their learning management system, and it was going to be quite an expensive remediation. And after consultation with the students, what they actually worked out is that they had a whole campus full of developers, right? So instead of investing in developing, the user interface, what they invested in is developing a whole series of very rich APIs.
Okay, so then the students could actually use those APIs.
Yeah. So I'll just throw up a slide here that's out of a case study for the university, and you can kind of see this is probably even a little bit earlier. It's actually progressed since this slide, but you can see that there's the traditional university network on the left, and then there's this sort of the cloud, right? And there's actually being a shift where there's actually more user interface work being done in the cloud space, in this open social apps and open content area. So the focus of the enterprise is actually managing the API, managing the security, the availability, the SLA, the performance, and the roadmap of just the API, not actually managing the development of the user interface. The students set about building the apps and the accessing these APIs. So other students use the other apps that the students build, and there becomes this sort of collaboration, this community. Some apps are favoured over others, and it's sort of a healthy competition. So what happens is this sort of app store mentality, progresses to the point where everyone's trying to better the previous app.
So is this a case of let's tie it back to the enterprise and some challenges, right? So just to give it that high level view first. One of the biggest challenges in enterprise applications inside legacy environments is when you need to move to new environments and you're stuck with high levels of customization. So what essentially this new approach to development of application front ends, or essentially customizations through an API or at the API level, allows you to leave that legacy environment or an application environment, an enterprise application that is largely uncustomized, and you're leaving essentially the customization to the customers.
Yeah, I think you imagine that campus of those uni students, right, moving into the workforce, and they'll be so used to basically customizing, the things the way they want things to work. And so they'll come in and not say, what solutions do I have access to? They'll say, where's the APIs? And so there is this potential trend emerging where it's all about managing the API and just letting the business units develop their own solutions based on this rich library of APIs that the enterprise then manages.
So it becomes interesting then, doesn't it, when you think about the reason that we've kind of pulled this out as a trend is essentially the capabilities of these traditional software vendors, the really big ones, the SAPs, of the last 20 years. What we're essentially saying is that the focus of assessment kind of moves from what will become a back-end application, and what becomes important is that library of APIs. So essentially, an enterprise in assessing what they're going to do moving forward with an application is to essentially do assessments in the market, comparative assessments at that API level and not at the vendor level. So the back end is going to become increasingly vanilla. Customisation won't go away. We've always struggled with configuration and customisation, and it's a huge expense inside enterprises today. That will still happen, but essentially that tab's been picked up by the users. And so this emerging bigger layer of APIs is going to be really game changing. And so then to tie it back to where we started, these organisations like SOA Software, which are developing API management interfaces, are kind of at the cutting edge now, where this is possible because the management capability to kind of rein in this growing need and number of APIs already exists in the market.
Absolutely. It's a convergence, if you like, of the evolution of APIs itself, so the whole sort of services-oriented architecture, so cloud is really forcing that to really mature and come to fruition. It's the this sort of emergence of crowdsourcing and that whole social dynamic of crowds, developing and having a race to build the better and the best one.
Okay. Well, let's throw these up. So one, cloud computing is a driver. Two, crowdsourcing is a driver.
APIs themselves that have been around for a while.
And so the maturing of the capabilities in terms of the application programming interface. And the interesting thing about that is that this won't only become a new delivery model, but it's actually going to change the economics of that whole API market. Because a lot of that's has typically been a revenue stream for a lot of organisations who might charge $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month just to access that API, so you can link it between your system and theirs.
Absolutely. This is the most amazing thing I think that's coming out of this, because I think that there's one more trend that actually comes into this, and that's that consumerization. That's the app store mentality.
So that's the end with the users, the mobility, the app store, that personalization of information.
But could you imagine this? Imagine that if you're an enterprise, maybe you're a startup, for instance, and you want to access an API that does an identity check on a customer, or sends out a letter, or enrolls them into a website portal database. What organisations who have those APIs in existence, and they're well structured, they're mature, and they could be backed by workflow and even manual intervention behind the scenes, quality assurance, all that kind of pieces of a complete workflow, they could be commercialised into this API portal, and other organisations could access them. So you could build a complete business process by leveraging of other APIs and other business processes.
So there's obviously going to be an API store in the very near future, and I guess that whole that last trend we're talking about, that personalisation of information, that consumerisation part at that end point of use, we're already seeing seeds of that. Encompassed in that is this generational shift in people who were born never not experiencing technology, right? And so we're seeing them, already customising their Facebook pages or their blogs because they don't like the way they look and they're just going to do something else. And so, these kids and young workers that are emerging today are already doing this. Okay, so this is obviously one of the key trends to watch in 2012. We've actually, as we said, have already done some more research on this. And Scott, I believe you have a report out now about API management and this particular trend.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done a deep dive, we've spoken to SOA Software, and we've really had a look at these case studies and some really interesting findings in that report.
Okay, and I think we'll throw the link up now, but keep an eye on this one.